and I laid down on the floor on a body pillow and I played Celine Dion all by myself and snuggled with stuffed animals. And as I was building those relationships, I was adding content.
I think it's so important we listen to the students in this.
I have been able to contact with most kids.
Good.
We had school issued trunks and they were color coordinated by size. So
Genius.
Stacy, you're doing a great job of bringing out the embarrassing stories.
If you got caught 3 times, then you went to the middle and the whole class pointed and squealed at you like a pig. It said, piggy, piggy, piggy.
Yeah, it's why you got into the business in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. My attendance has been pretty high for this. Making that adjustment to the schedule allows you Tuesday, Thursday to reach out to the kids that aren't showing up to that live class session. You know, one of the things with a high school teacher is trying to make your environment feel safe and comfortable to try things. That there's little tricks of the trade that you kind of use as you're teaching. And some of them you pick up from others and some of them you learn naturally. We were playing a simple game, running into me and just mad because I knocked him over.
We wonder why our country's in shambles right now. Look what we've done to our youth.
And I think that's such a fun way to teach kids.
Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi-Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson.
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
And it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey.
Welcome to another episode of Thinking PE. I'm excited today because we have a special guest. Clint is with us today. We're going to let him introduce himself in a little bit and give us some more details. But I'm just super excited about what he brings to the table. I have been friends with Clint for a while. And one of the things that jumped out at me as soon as we started heading for distance learning was Clint's passion for kids in general, for them as people, not just as PE students, but them as people. And I think that's going to come out today as we interview him and talk to him. So I'm pretty excited to get into that. But Jamie is going to get us started here. And we're going to get to know Clint just a little bit better here.
Well, first, let's have Clint. Why don't you go ahead and give us the Wikipedia version of your introduction? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Clint Lundeen, and I'm a high school PE teacher at Cambridge-Isani High School. I've been doing it, I think, for over 15 years now, 16, 17 years, something like that. You kind of lose track as you keep getting into it. But I substitute taught before that, straight out of school until I got my job there, and have been teaching, coaching ever since. I also run the Link Crew program in Cambridge-Isani with a couple associates. So as PE teachers, we get wrapped into coaching and other forms of kind of helping out the school. And so that's a fun thing that I get to be involved in as well.
For sure. The number one topic I really did want to talk to you about, Clint, is this idea of connection. And man, with this COVID-19 and us, I don't know when people will listen to this, but we're right in the middle or kind of maybe at the tail end of teaching with it. I hope we're at the tail end of teaching with it. We don't know. This could lead into the fall. This is where we're at right now, is nobody knows. And so
right.
If you're listening, whenever you're listening to this, just kind of understand that that's where this conversation is taking place. Help you give your perspective. I remember my conversation with you, it just jumped out at me that your number one topic, your priority, was going to be to try to reach every one of those kids at least once a week. And I'd like you to kind of start there, share how that went, how it's going, what have you learned, how did you do it, anything you think would be helpful to the global PE body.
Yeah, well, when we first did this, we had that week of planning or that 2 weeks of planning or whatever it was. And during that time, the Cambridge-Isani School District at the high school level made the decision that we were going to set up a bell schedule. kind of deal where we actually meet with the kids Monday through Friday. And we did that for a few weeks. And then we made adjustments and started doing the Google Meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay.
Which was a great adjustment for, in my opinion, for what we were dealing with, because the kids that didn't show up to class, like, it was hard to find time to try to connect with them.
Yeah.
And so making that adjustment to the schedule allows you Tuesday, Thursday to reach out to the kids that aren't showing up to that live class session. So that was very helpful school district wise to kind of implement this. And I don't know about with you guys, but the thing when this whole thing started is we were all flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
You know, so I like that I was given some guidelines, because that's something that I really feel like I need to function at a decent level, is to have some structure. And for that matter, I really see that kids need that structure too for themselves. And so that was a great starting point for this. And then at that point in time, early on, the first couple of weeks, it was hard to connect with every kid. But some of them were just connections that fall on deaf ears. I was calling kids, I was emailing kids, and trying multiple ways. But the cool thing is through that, my attendance has been pretty high for this. I forget what the governor said, if it was like 4 out of 10 kids were not basically showing up to class. I forget what he said. And I was getting probably about 85% of my class showing up. And so it was dealing with that 15%.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I'm down to only like 2 or 3 kids that just really, I honestly, sometimes we have kids that transfer and I don't know about it. And so I've put things out to counselors on a couple kids that I have not been able to contact. Otherwise, I have been able to contact with most kids.
Good. And how's that been going from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fairly interesting. What I did for curriculum wise was I kept it pretty simple, because and I just try and build a little bit each week off of it, but we just put together fitness plans and kind of personal fitness stuff, and then different kind of activities that they can be doing with their friends and family and close relatives, and then I have them journal it. And our sessions are mainly us talking about those and me like putting in pointers dealing with physical fitness, like, you know, what a good exercise heart rate is, and you know, strength and endurance and flexibility, and just kind of pointing those out as we talk through those issues and those journals that we're working on.
Okay. And to give perspective, if you're listening and you haven't figured it out, Clint's teaching at the high school level, not the kindergarten level. So, because that would obviously make a big difference. You know, if you're
definitely,
if you're trying to do that with elementary students, you might find it very different experience. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, that it seems very appropriate, and you seem to be getting a good feedback from the students.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off what you're just saying right now, at high school, motivation is probably one of the main challenges, where I think at the younger levels, kids are ready to move. Mm-hmm. And so you know, at the high school level, it's maybe not necessarily that way. Like, motivation is a big part, whether you're with them or whether you're trying to teach them distance. So I have tried to be very creative in how I kind of grab their attention or maybe keep them engaged. And so the one thing I started doing right off the bat was I start each class with a song. So as students are showing up, I either play a song, or I kind of play it and sing along, or I play it and and do some sort of teachable moment while doing an introduction. Meanwhile, at the same time, that's when I'm starting to take attendance.
Okay.
As kids are like showing up, I'm trying to keep track of who's all there during that time. So.
And you're doing that with Google Meet?
Yep, Google Meet, and it's a live session. One of the early first sessions, you know, kids had probably been home for about 3 weeks. I danced with Alexa to "One is the Loneliest Number" during that first couple minutes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so then later on, some of my earlier classes the kids were showing up, and I try to be able to see them, so I have them pull up their videos, and a very high percentage of my students were still in their beds while in class. So a few weeks into this, I did another intro where over my gym clothes or my polo and shorts, I put a bathrobe on and pajama pants, and I laid down on the floor on a body pillow, and I played Celine Dion all by myself and snuggled with stuffed animals and kind of woke myself up for class. And literally in my second hour class, as I'm doing this, I have a student show up late in their bed in a bathrobe and watching me, and just started dying laughing when they saw that.
I think you sent that one to me. And I just got the biggest chuckle out of that kid. That he missed your whole bathrobe thing because he was late for class, and it was like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever it was.
Right. Oh, yeah. Kids showing up late, and our first hour is 9 o'clock. You know, we used to be at school at 8 in the morning. So,
and they're not afraid to show up for a live session with their hair all over the place, and it's just crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Some kids like still wrapped up in a blanket, and yeah, it's kind of insane watching what they don't care about.
But you do get a good glimpse for who they are in some ways. You know, you get to see them in their home setting. You get to see the kid that maybe is normally quiet come alive a little, or the opposite. And I bet you get good insights from their home environment.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, some kids, one thing that I was a little nervous about, so I always leave it optional, is I was nervous that some kids maybe would be nervous about showing their home. Yeah. And so I always would make it optional, but highly encourage them to find a spot where I could actually see their face. And I tried to make it something that I really talked with them about, is that I want to be able to interact with them and see their face. And I missed that. I missed that part of our school day. So, and then just recently in the last couple of weeks, I'm having them send me 30-second videos of exercising in their favorite thing that they like to do for physical activity. So, and I've really found that I've enjoyed watching those. It's made a lot more work for me.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I just feel like maybe I don't know if it's actually more work, but it feels like more work because we're kind of doing the things that of our job that we maybe necessarily didn't enjoy the most, if that makes sense.
Say a little bit more about that.
So like the reason why I became a Phi Ed teacher was to be physically active with kids, connect with them, play sports, challenge them physical fitness wise, working out and interacting with them. And I didn't do it to do the grading. I didn't do it to check the emails. I didn't do it to enter in points into a computer or any of that stuff. Yeah. You know, And it seems like that is what's been starting to dominate, our life as a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a
I
lot
would,
of sense.
I would say we've spent a lot of time in podcast on the idea of connection versus content and the importance of that student connection. It really sounds like you've got that caption. And maybe that's one of my lessons I learned the hard way was focusing too much on the content, not enough on the connection early on. So I think that's really cool how you've made it, and that's what captured my interest when Stacy had mentioned you, was just your diligence to make sure you're connecting with each and every one of your students.
Yeah. And then there's a couple things that I think transferred from the classroom environment to this online learning that there's little tricks of the trade that you kind of use as you're teaching. And some of them you pick up from others, and some of them you learn naturally. But one thing that I try to have kids share almost every one of our sessions, like every kid I want to share. And it's kind of, I tell them that this is part of their journal, daily points, and this kind of thing. And it could be something as simple as, hey, what is your favorite cardiovascular activity that you like to do? And I want everyone to share it. And so I start out, and what I've been doing is I've started out and I pick normally a kid that I know is pretty responsible to start. And then I have them pick who goes next. And one reason why I do that is all the kids in the class then don't know when they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a way to keep them all engaged. And a lot of times a kid that is more, responsible is going to pick another kid that's more responsible. And then eventually you get to the kids that maybe aren't quite as responsible, but now they've hung around the whole time because they're like, am I going to go next type of deal? They don't know. But it's funny because sometimes I do catch kids like, Stevie, where are you? Because they stepped away from their computer or did something.
They're playing with their stuffed animals.
Playing with their stuffed animals.
Right.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, and then I'll use those as teachable moments as they talk about it, about heart rate and duration of a cardio workout and that kind of stuff. And but I kind of try to do that through conversation. And a lot of times kids are picking up learning about target heart rate zone and different things without even realizing it. Yeah. And I think that's such a fun way to teach kids.
Jamie, I've really appreciated Clint and my friendship with him because he always regrounds me. And you can see why, just from listening to a short piece with him. And it was just fun to listen to him talk about, he's a super creative guy, got this really cool sense of humor, and he uses that and his passion for kids to just build this connection with them. And then he's a solid professional. And so he uses that connection to sneak in content. And I think it was Mike Ginicola that mentioned that it's kind of like as parents, we have to sneak in the vegetables somewhere and mix them in with the food, other food on the plate to get kids to eat their vegetables. And that's what it feels like he does. Is he gets the solid base down, this connection with them. And then once he has the connection, he can ask them to do anything and builds that content up. And he just slowly moves it up into, it seems like from that conversation, like it's a really solid distance learning program he built. And I know he's not confident in it because this is his first time, but it seems like it's a really solid overall program he put together.
Yeah, it just seems like the rest of us, he had no idea where to start. So he started someplace. He took the needs of his students. And one of the needs of his students as high school students was motivation. And how do I motivate these students to access his materials beyond just getting a grade?
Yeah.
Putting in some meaningful effort there. And And right away, he started making those connections, building that relationship, because he just doesn't seem like a guy that you would normally see snuggling up to stuffed animals. But that captured his students' attention.
Yeah.
And like you said, once he captured their attention, built that connection, now he snuck in the vegetables.
Yeah. And I think that's the key that I don't want us to miss in this. It's that using all of it, using the creativity, using the connections to really build the content within. And this next segment, he goes into, you actually ask him a really good question here about his content, and he goes into some pretty good detail on the content. So let's take a listen there.
Let's actually keep, if you could, just focus in on that content part. We talked a lot about the connection and about the content. Are you able to stick to your similar curriculum that you used in your classes before? Is it a lot of review, new teaching? What does your content look like?
Yeah, I think from our principal down, he said, do not try to do the same content you used to do. Simplify what you're doing, because, I mean, this is new. It's crazy, you know, what we're kind of all going through. And so obviously, the content that I really was focusing on was more personal fitness. And so the content that we really lost through this was a lot of the sports skill-based stuff that we were doing, and really focused more on personal fitness and that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit and get into some of that a little bit, just from kids' activities, you know, with their own families and friends. But I guess, yes, way less content than what we used to do in this environment. Now, if we have time, like if this is something that's going to be extended into the future, I think I would slowly add more of that stuff back in.
Yeah.
But the world that we are currently in, I think just even what you guys have been talking about, this with relationships before rigor, or before, you know, content, connecting before content, I think I don't know if there's a better way of going about it than what we're doing.
Yeah. One of the phrases that came up early that sounds like what you're talking about is the phrase less is more. That was kind of given out, is you're going to get a lot further doing less. And it's kind of a weird concept, but I think it was wise of your principal to say, no, scale her back. And
Yes.
then I like what you said, though, is if we do this into the future, if we've established these connections, we've now established, like we do in our classroom, the first couple days of class, you establish classroom procedures. This is how it's going to work. And once you've got those, the framework of a class, now you got a lot to add. You can do a lot of different things if you've got those basic connections and the basic structure of your classroom down. Now the sky, I don't know if the sky's the limit, but you can certainly start going the direction. I think you said just add little by little, add some more skill, add some more other things. I like that approach.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting with you just saying that. I had a student that was showing up early, and then they stopped showing up to the Google Meet sessions. And as I was building those relationships, I was adding content. Like I was adding things like, hey, now I want different warm-ups every day of your different recorded workouts. And so I was adding things to their journal, but if they were not attending class, they wouldn't get those bits of information.
Yeah.
And so I was almost like trying to connect that. On the reverse side of it, you're missing content if you don't connect with me.
Yeah.
And so this student now is back showing up because a couple of her journals, she got a poor grade. And I said, well, you haven't been in class to hear what's supposed to be in your journals. And so now that particular student is attending regularly again. So that was kind of a fun thing for me to see in this process, because everything's so new and so fresh. It's like, it's so hard to kind of navigate it. So it's been fun to listen to you guys, but also listen to other teachers, because I mean, me personally, I've been like a sponge the last with this new environment.
I love what you just said there. It connected a few things in my brain, that you didn't just penalize them for not showing up. You made it relevant, and now they missed something. So you didn't have to tell them, hey, you have to show up. You basically said, your grade isn't lower because you missed. I'm not penalizing you, but you got penalized because you didn't hear what I was saying. So that was the natural consequence. And now it's relevant. It's like, oh, there's a reason I need to show up. It's not just that he's going to mark me absent. I got to check the box. It's he's actually giving me something that I have to use. And they still might do it reluctantly. They'd rather sleep, but
Right.
you give them purpose. You make it purposeful.
Understand the
Is
why.
the word that I'm looking for. An interview we just did with some high school and middle school and college students, they kind of pointed that out, that if you're just putting out busy work, we see right through it.
They see right through it.
Yeah.
And so it was just super eye-opening to me that that's kind of the words they were using is, don't just keep us busy, have a purpose. And then Jamie picked up on that interview too, that, hey, that's what we need to do with these kids. They're not dummies. They're humans. Find ways to motivate them, and you motivate them by making it relevant and doing exactly what you were doing there. I just love that connection you just made in my brain.
Yeah. That's funny that I listened to that session you guys had with those students.
Yeah.
And shortly after I listened to that session, my next class lesson was totally built on, I proposed the question where I tried to have everyone share in the class to answer this question, but what is like think of their top 3 challenges that they've been facing through this distance learning. And so it had nothing to do with physical education, but it was more to do with how can I teach a little bit different to reach them where they're at. And so I wanted them to think of 3, because if they all had the same one, I wanted them to dip into another one so we weren't just hearing the same thing over and over. So
Can you explain some of what, off the top of your head, some of the ones that came up a lot?
Yeah, actually, some of the challenges, it was the classroom environment. Like, their questions can get answered immediately. Like they can respond to either a student sitting next to them or a teacher. They can talk with them, and they can get like a little conversation going with that teacher, and it helps them learn what they're struggling with. And in this environment, that's really been taken away. So students that really learn through visual and conversation like that, audio, are struggling in this environment. And so that was one of them. But there was a lot of things too with just down study time, like meeting with their friends and studying stuff in the cafeteria before class, during lunchtime in the hall, and just those little breaks that they would get throughout the day with their friends and stuff. Some were really missing that. But yeah, that was probably 2 of the top ones. There was a couple other ones that I might think of as we're going along here.
Yeah, feel free to throw them in if they come back to you. That's good insight. I love sharing things on the podcast here when it's from the students, because I think it's so important we listen to the students in this. We can jabber all we want about being professionals, but they're the ones we're trying to reach, and some of them are very eloquent with how they are able to find what they need and tell us. So.
Yeah, and that was one reason why I made adjustments in a couple of my lesson plans to try and teach as I was interacting with the students. And so, because sometimes, like I would get a student on that's answering a question, and I would have to be like, hey, keep your mic on. I want to talk with you about this issue a little bit. And we would have a conversation back and forth while other students are listening in. And boy, we would hit some good learning topics while doing that. And when another student is involved and they're not just listening to me, like, you know, I don't know, do a PowerPoint or something like that.
Yep.
I really think it's more organic and really gives them a piece of that learning too.
Yeah. Did you find other kids were engaged because another student was involved and it wasn't just you preaching at them?
Yes. Yeah. You know, a lot of times that would get us down another trail or get us talking about another subject or get deeper into a subject, because then another kid would feel comfortable piping in and either coming up with a question or with, you know, another response to that you wouldn't get that interaction if you were just lecturing to them maybe.
Yeah.
In that relationship building, it takes, I mean, you know, as well as anybody else, it takes time. You know, I don't think it matters what the grade level is. You can't, in the first week of school, when we do our team building games and things like that, you can't expect to build those deep relationships in the first week of school. And in a distance learning setting, we can't expect those deep relationships, those deep conversations or conversations period in the first couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Oh, they love when, like, if my wife had to work from home and she walked past in the background, oh my goodness, they love that kind of stuff too. And just connecting in that way.
Well, they see you as a real person.
Yep, exactly.
What do you think, with all this that we're putting in, we're being forced to do professional development in whole new ways, learn new technologies. When this does get passed and it's back to whatever the new normal is, and we're not doing distance learning, we're in your classrooms again, developing curriculum, what do you think you're going to take with you from these past 8 weeks? Anything? Or what do you think you've gained, either mentally, physically, skills-wise, and anything that comes to mind?
You know, that just the whole time you were saying that, what just kind of was just going off in my head was building relationships, and just the whole thing with like, you know, missing that connecting, even just being together. Sometimes it's physical touch, sometimes it's just like that presence of being able to interact and be together. And what sports, how that the sportsmanship, the, you know, character that you grow in from sports and stuff, like all that stuff was just kind of flickering off in my head when you kind of brought that up. Is like, I miss it, I want it back, you know.
Yeah, it's why you got into the business in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Jamie, I found it's an interesting process that he went through in designing his curriculum. Just like most administrators that we've heard from, I think there was a lot of wisdom from leadership that talked about, don't try to do everything you were trying to do. Scale this down. I haven't really heard from any teachers that their administrators told them to overdo it. Everybody kind of had good wisdom, I think, and said back it down. And that's where we've heard the phrase on several of the podcasts, you know, less is more. And he kind of coined a phrase in this called relationships over rigor. And we call it connection versus, you know, over content, that type of thing. But it's that same concept of, hey, let's be respectful of the kids here. Let's maintain the most important part, which is that relationship, or which is that connection. And then from there, let's see what we can do. And that's what he did. But the problem is, if you back off, something's got to give. And for him, he said it was the skill stuff, and at the high school level, the sports, which was kind of interesting how he was grieving that at one point in the interview. He was talking about, I want that back. And I think that's, we kind of overlook. Sports kind of gets a bad rap today in some ways of teaching sports, and it's all about sports. But that's a huge place where standards 3, 4, and 5 are really emphasized, and giving kids a chance to practice skill, you know, the standards 3, 4, and 5, and adapting to things like behavior on the court, and how to be a good winner, how to be a good loser, what sportsmanship, all those things are developed in those games, and we don't want to forget about them either, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And I like what he said, the idea of he's gonna build those back up. If we have to keep doing this, now I have this establishment with them, now I can work these back in. So he hasn't lost it completely, and he's ready to get back to it, because it just seems like his heart's in. This is why he's a PE teacher. He loves to interact with kids and play games and teach them through sport, teach them through games. So anyway, I just got a kick out of how he is so well-rounded and brings that back to the important pieces of PE.
I couldn't agree more. And just the approach to maintain a full curriculum. And it's not rocket science, even though, as we're filming this today, SpaceX is docking with the International Space Station. And there were some geniuses that put that together, but this isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
We've actually, maybe hard to implement, maybe hard to put together, but we actually, through all this, it's come down to 3 C's: connection, creativity, and content. And it's all coming from Clint. All right. So 3 C's: connection, creativity, and content, those 3 things. And it starts with the connections. It starts with building those relationships, and you find a creative way to build those relationships, and you find a creative way to introduce that content. And right now we've kind of defaulted to the fitness side of the content. And like Clint alluded to is, once we get good at that and we build the skills and have the tools, then we'll start introducing those things that we did in our class with skill development and sportsmanship and stuff that we find in standards 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just, I think with Clint, this has been jumping out as the way he feels like he spins it. He used, at least the way he talked about it in the interview, is jumping out. Some of the other people we've interviewed do this too, but the way he's kind of coined this is he talks about how he uses that, creativity to build some content, and then once he had the content, he's attached the fact that now he's able to build this curriculum and around, and it's like spirals up little bit by using those 3 C's. So I don't know, who knows, maybe we've coined a phrase with him, the 3 C's from Clint or something like that. I don't know.
To me, it breaks it down what I like to call it. He broke it down Barney style, put it in such simple terms that you could see it on an episode of Barney.
Nice. Oh, well, we've got another segment coming up here that is actually quite funny. There's a lot of laughter going on because you actually asked him a question: what's the funniest thing he's seen in education? And I'm just surprised again how there's some real depth here. There's some real content that we're going to get, even though there's a lot of laughing, a lot of joking around. So I'm excited for people to hear this next segment.
The funniest thing you've ever seen as a teacher?
I don't know. Like, if I'm giving probably the PE version or the appropriate ones, just watching some kids lose it, like in class. One kid just smashed a badminton racket and then, trying to draw that kid back in or deal with that situation. Another kid, when we were playing a simple game, running into me and just mad because I knocked him over, or something like that. Like, I'm not trying to share kids' names or anything, so just trying to but just different things like that, to somebody running with flag football and their pants slowly falling off as they're running. When kids used to wear those low pants all the time, that kind of stuff. So, I've had some really fun, interesting experiences as a PE teacher.
So in a lot of ways, your funniest things that you've seen as a teacher also become somebody's something they learned the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those low rider kids now as adults are looking back and thinking they had too many stories about those low riding days. I don't know. There had to be more than one story that came from that. That's for sure.
Well, and those were always the kids at the high school level that we'd have trouble getting them to talk them into changing for PE. So, yeah, we got to see that kind of backfire a couple times.
Yeah, that is the tough part with secondary PE. You deal with that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's the easy part is the games and the behavior in the games. The hardest part is all that surrounding, changing for class and egos and all that kind of stuff that you have to deal with at the secondary level.
Yeah, definitely. Body images, and also just not being, one of the things with a high school teacher is trying to make your environment feel safe and comfortable to try things that some kids maybe have never tried before. Yeah. Remember, as a high school kid, we had school issued trunks, and they were color coordinated by size. So
genius.
I think your smalls and your mediums were like red and blue, like good colors. But then your large was green, your extra large was brown. So, just great fuel for children to have to deal with in the realm that we're talking about right now.
We've come so far. When I was in elementary school, we played, I was from Wisconsin, and we played Duck, Duck, Goose, Duck, Duck, Gray Duck, whatever.
Yeah.
But so as part of it goes, if you got caught 3 times, then you went to the middle, and the whole class pointed and squealed at you like a pig. It said, piggy, piggy, piggy. Well, it's like, who do you think gets caught first 3 times?
Yeah.
Those kids that don't need somebody's pointing at them squealing like a pig. And it's like, man, if I saw something like that or did something like that, now that you should be fired on the spot.
Right. Yeah, we've come a long ways in learning some of this stuff.
We wonder why our country's in shambles right now. Look what we've done to our youth for the past.
Hey, some things we had to learn the hard way.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Clint's stories, they bring back some memories, really make me laugh, because we can all think of things we've done in the past and like, oh boy, that was some pretty old school stuff, whether you're color coding the shorts for kids in Fayette or pointing to kids in the middle and squealing at them like pigs. It just it goes back to the one of my favorite movies, Mr. Woodcock, with Billy Bob Thornton, who basically takes every stereotype of a physical educator and amplifies it on what not to do. And it just we look at how much we've evolved over what physical education is from a K-12 perspective.
Well, absolutely. And kind of to piggyback on that, that's exactly what's happened in the past basically 8-9 weeks with this distance learning. There's been an evolution of where do we start, probably doing some things poorly at the beginning, doing the best we can, and now we've evolved even in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. And I think, looking back, Clint really just did a great job of summarizing that with the 3 C's we've coined with him and how he moves in and out of them. He used some creativity to build connection. Then he uses this connection to add some content, and he circles around and around in the 3 C's. And I really think that shows the evolution even in a short period of time. And if we have to, we can keep evolving. And Jamie, I think Clint just gave us a lot of good things to think about here with connection, creativity, and content.
And that was Thinking PE.